Good afternoon. The Texas House immediately got to work last Thursday in a special session called by Governor Abbott. Our members had a busy weekend this past weekend, passing bills out of committee so they can make it to full consideration by the House. Unfortunately, this incredible work came to a halt due to the Democrats fleeing on a private plane for an all-expense-paid vacation to Washington, D.C. and breaking the quorum that allows us to do the people's business in the Texas House. Make no mistake, this is not about one particular bill. This is political theater by and for Texas Democrats. As legislators, it's our duty to show up and do the people's work. These Democrats have walked off the job twice now and abandoned their obligation to represent you. This morning, the Texas House enacted a call of the House to ensure the return of these absent members. The call will remain in effect until all action on the governor's proclamation calling city special session is complete. Texas Republicans will be here, ready to work in the House chamber, doing our job as we were elected to do. We've all had jobs that we didn't like before, but the difference between these Democrats and the millions of hardworking Texans is that these people that contribute to our economy cannot grab a six-pack, jump on a private plane, leave work unannounced, and still expect to be paid. At this time, I'd like to introduce a couple of my colleagues to talk about some of the things that we're working on this session that remain to be done. I'm going to ask that Representative White talk about what we're doing for our teachers, Representative Noble to talk about tax relief, and Representative Duton to talk about our CPS, Children's Protective Services, legislation. And I'll come back to close in just a moment. So let me start with James.
Thank y'all so much. Really quickly here, our members in the Texas House have made a strong, ongoing commitment to reward our teachers for their service and investment in our classrooms. In 2019, we passed legislation to increase the state contribution to the teacher retirement pension system by giving more to retired teachers without requiring greater contributions from our teachers or school districts. Our state legislature, that's Republicans and Democrats, stood beside and behind our teachers. In his call for this special session, Governor Greg Abbott made it a point to place a 13th check for our retired teachers as a priority for the legislature to deliver on. Approximately 430,000 retired teachers are counting on us to provide them with this 13th check during the special session. If this legislation is not passed, Texas retirees will have to wait until 2023 for the prospect of any financial relief. I truly look forward to voting for a bill that can ease the cost of living for retirees and provide them some relief after they have worked so very hard for so many years. But how can the same Democrats who supported our retired teachers 2 years ago abandon efforts to secure them more help? They must come back so we can deliver valuable relief to our great retired teachers.
While I may be the state representative of just House District 89, I am sure that every member of the Texas House has heard from Texans that are continuing to struggle with rising property taxes. Without question, property tax relief remains the #1 issue we hear about in my office. And now some of our Democrat colleagues have left the state while our residents are dealing with runaway costs of their property tax increases. Homeowners across Texas are crying out for help. These absent members will not deliver relief to senior citizens getting taxed out of their homes, small businesses struggling following the pandemic, or young families dreaming of owning their very first homes. But I can assure you that we shall remain here until this issue gets across the finish line. I call on my absentee colleagues to return so we can keep our promise to keep Texas the best place to live and work and raise a family.
Thank you all. While finding placement for children has always been difficult, our providers that are facing unprecedented challenges in the foster care system due to complex regulatory and oversight environment, difficulty responding to challenging caseloads, and aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. In response to this, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services has asked for millions of dollars in additional funding to provide additional payments to providers who serve children with the highest level of need, and to provide targeted capacity building grants so that providers can continue to offer the critical services that our foster children need. The funding is desperately needed to stabilize and improve care for the children who experience trauma and abuse and neglect. We all got into the Texas House to help protect the most vulnerable Texans. If Democrat members of the House care about the children, they will come home and fight for them to get the safety and protection that they need.
Thank you, JC. As we've heard from these members, by walking out again, Democrats have potentially killed legislation that benefits our teachers, that works for our foster kids, excuse me, that benefits our seniors, takes care of our families, and all Texans who want a Texas solution to the drug trafficking and human smuggling that occurs along our border. They've done all this while gallivanting across our nation's capital, making appearances on TV, raising money, and enjoying a 3-week vacation while we Republicans are here, along with the citizens of Texas, awaiting their return. And we do absolutely hope for that. Their actions show a lack of respect for their constituents who elected them. We denounce that decision to flee the state and to avoid voting on critical legislation that Texans desperately need and care about. I ask the Texas taxpayers, is this what you expect from your elected representatives? I'd be happy to yield for a few questions before we wrap up.
Mr. Chairman, could you elaborate a little bit on the call of the House and what basically is the procedure? I assume GPS and maybe Rangers does their jurisdiction extend only to Texas or?
Yes, Dave. The only ability they have is within the state. And we hope that all those legislators not here will, by their own will, choose to come back and do the work. That's what we're elected to do so. That was the oath we swore to. Those are the rules we adopted. And we think their better angels will prevail. And we'll see in here. We think things have been delayed, not denied.
What role do Republicans have as far as trying to strike a compromise on the election bill in order to get Democrats not only to come back, but to stay?
Yeah, Kristen, I think we've already compromised on the bill. That bill's been negotiated. We had a great bill last session. It's been improved by the Democrats' own admission. They were on the committee that heard the bill. Many of the people were here, spent 24 hours working on that bill over the weekend. Those bills can be amended on the House floor. It is their legislation. It's theirs to shape, it's theirs to work on, and we await their presence.
Mr. Chairman, what about I guess the stalemate here that we could see? You know, Democrats, they've essentially told us they have no immediate plans to come back. The governor could keep calling special sessions over and over. How long could this draw out in theory?
January of 23 is the short, snappy answer to that. But I really think when they look at their constituents and see that they need tax relief, they need funding for schools, they need CPS addressed, our teachers need to be paid, that they're going to want to come back and do the work they're elected to do. I really think that's just a matter of time. It may be days, it may be weeks, it may be months. It's the governor's decision whether or not we return for more special sessions. But I think that's very much his desire and our desire to do the work that we were elected to do.
What happens if Democrats hold out for weeks, months, and we continue to have this group here in the chamber? What are your plans? I mean, what is this body prepared to do?
Well, I think we're spending a lot of money to be here. And I think at some point the people of Texas are going to say, what are we paying for to get nothing? And I think they will have to rise up and speak for themselves. We're delivering a message. We want our colleagues back. We respect their work. We respect their opinions. We want to embrace them and work with them. But we have work to do. But I'm hoping the people of Texas will now take that message to them because that's for whom they're working.
What's your message to them, especially the reps who say they are working up in DC right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know what they're working on, because the work of the Texas House occurs in the Texas House, in the committee rooms, as we work on bills. There's no work going on there for the Texas House. They need to be here. That's why we measure quorum every day when we register.
And what's the mood in there? Is it frustrating? I mean, if you're saying they're not working up there, they've kind of halted work here, what's going on inside for the past 4.5 hours?
Well, I mean, we would certainly like to see them here, but it's not the first time this legislature's moved a little more slowly than some of us would recommend, right? And so this is just par for the course. We've all had some pretty tough days. We've had some pretty long days, days that became multiple days on the floor. So we're up to the challenge. That's not a big deal. We want them to come back. That's our message.
Last question, one more.
Are there things you could be working on, during this, or are you just gonna have to stand in place?
Our committees are unable to help our teachers. They're unable to consider tax relief. They're unable to handle the crisis at the border. We are at a standstill, ready to work, Dave, but at a standstill.
Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.